My question would have been change in comfort.
They've basically said that they have currently two suspension maps, if you think about it. One is the Rizta map, which is slightly more comfort oriented, and there is the 450X map, which is slightly more sporty. We believe there is room to improve both. But they're saying the customer seems to perceive the 450 as a sportier scooter and the Rizta as a slightly more comfortable scooter, so they don't want to mess with it.
Right.
So they haven't done anything on the suspension.
The reason why I would have asked for your feedback on that is because anyways, like you said, the 450 is a sportier kind of scooter,
Yeah.
and it always rode that way as well. Very balanced with additional weight and
Correct.
all, but you always had that feel of what's happening with the road
Correct.
and all of that.
Nothing has changed.
Okay, which is a good thing because everything that Shumi said about this tire, the Any tread, is that it has a stiffer sidewall. When they say reinforced sidewall, it's basically saying that okay, because this is carrying more weight because of the battery, etc. So they reinforce the sidewall to carry that load better, and that would typically end up giving some additional firmness. But clearly they've calibrated it so that the overall comfort is not compromised.
It's roughly to me exactly what I remember the 450X being over the bumps and in the corners. Nothing has changed. So if you've thought so far that the 450s are uncomfortable scooters, you're going to continue to think they're uncomfortable. If you think they're a very nice sporty scooter, you're going to continue to think they're a very nice scooter. So as much of feedback as comes through earlier, that much feedback is still coming through.
Okay.
No change on that front. Okay. The second change is that they've added multi-mode traction control.
Okay, this was not on the Apex also?
They brought skid control to the Rizta first. And on the Rizta, it's a really simple system. We compare the two wheel speeds. And hardware that they've added is the ABS ring, effectively, as a speed sensor. And they say, oh, rear is spinning too fast, let's cut motor. And what they're saying is, because they're cutting motor, and it's not an engine, the number of things that happen before the torque dissipates is much less, so they can react very, very quickly.
Okay.
So on the Rizta, I had a feeling that it worked so effectively that you couldn't actually tell whether it was working or not.
Super.
Which is awesome, right? Now they have 3 traction control modes. Okay, so the base one is called rain. Then there's
before you go further, because Shumi's brought up ABS ring, some of you might not know what it actually does. So it's a ring, metallic ring with slots in it, and there's a sensor on one side which basically reads the gaps, right? So
it's a magnetic sensor.
Yeah, so it just reads the movement of the wheel and it can tell you how many times it's passed a gap and then come to a tooth like that. So by that, by the rate at which it spins and it senses those gaps, it knows what speed you're doing.
Correct.
It's a very simple way of measuring speed and basically identifying when it's locked, because then the movement will stop.
Yeah, and systems can also tell whether the speed is tending towards 0 or not. So the system can intervene up to 10 times a second, 20 times a second, depending on how expensive and fine-tuned the system is. And the idea is it is going to come to 0 at what point should the system, for example, the ABS system, intervene and unlock that wheel. And in the case of the traction control, it's the opposite. It can only work on the rear wheel because that's the only place where we can control the speed actively, and it can decide to cut power if the front is spinning at X, but the rear is spinning higher than X.
Correct.
And again, the intervention decides how you feel about that. So in the off-road situation, going over X on the rear wheel should be totally okay because you do spin up the wheel.
Correct.
But in the rain, it may not be acceptable, and that's what they've done.
Okay.
On the Rizta, it was just an on and off system. Now you've got a 4-set system.
And you can switch it. Rain is the.
You can switch it off. Okay. There's rain, there's road, and there's rally.
Rally.
There is a little bit of hyperbole here. So this sand color that you're seeing on the screen, it's called hyper sand.
Oh, it's got sand color. Okay, so what's the second color?
It's called stealth blue.
What kind of blue is that? Sorry, I've not seen it. So
it looked like the Rizta blue.
Okay.
Like a navy blue matte kind of thing is what I remember of it. And they chose to give me the sand scooter instead, so we're okay. To me, as somebody who writes a lot, hyper sand sounds like ampersand, but hey, that's just me. Okay, so you can switch it off, and if you switch off traction control, you should know every time you key off and key on, it will reset to whatever mode you had left it last when you switched it off.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good.
Only when you switch it off. If you're in any of the other traction control modes, it remembers what you were in, so good job.
Oh, super.
Now, rain mode has a certain intervention point where it will not let the scooter spin almost at all. And when it cuts power, then it returns a relatively small amount of power.
Okay.
Until you close the throttle and reset the system, in which case the intervention point goes up again. There was no real wet condition to ride on this. They had created a mud pit and all of that stuff. I didn't want to go into it because I had to catch a flight in the evening and I didn't want muddy boots and all of this nonsense in my bag. I'm being honest with you. I switch to road mode. The road mode intervention point is just a slightly higher than rain. So a little bit more slip is allowed. Rain is very, very cautious. Road is just a little less cautious. But power restoration is much stronger than in rain mode. And again, it cycles until it senses a closed throttle and resets the system. Reset being intervention point is quite high, restoration points are relatively low. And then in rally mode, the intervention point is very late, so you can spin the scooter up. And then the restoration of the bar is a lot more progressive, allowing you to keep the slide going if you feel like it before it stops it. And in each case, when you close the throttle, it goes back to saying, now I want to find the intervention point, not the restoration point. Okay. They showed me the graphs of this. I'm not allowed to have pictures of that graph. So I am going to draw from memory the 3 graphs and leave them here. So you can see the difference in the interventions and in the restoration points. This clip is actually from a much longer video, which is on our main channel, which is called MotorInc. Why don't you visit us there? This idea in more detail over there with my great friend Karthikeya Singhi. You like him, right?